At this time, we call the meeting to order, and we would like to ask everyone to please stand. And as always, we begin our meeting with a prayer, and then we'll do the pledge. Tonight, Commissioner Glenn Green will listen to prayer.
Father, we thank you this evening for your blessings upon us. We thank you, Father, for health and strength. We thank you most of all for forgiveness of sin and your Son that died for us that we might live eternally. Father, we pray this evening as we try to conduct the business of the county that you would help us to have wisdom and that the things that we might do would benefit all. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Let's pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'm like, this is not planned, and I didn't plan it coming into the meeting, but, I think we have a moment of silence in support of law enforcement. Just saw on the news where the two officers in Los Angeles, sitting in their car, somebody came up and fired on those two officers, a male and a female officer, and it showed pictures of the female officer with has a child, and they're still in critical condition, but they're still alive. And I think we just need to take time, just let me have a moment of silence, and
the one in Henderson.
And the gentleman, the deputy in Hendersonville that was murdered in the line of duty. And I'll just say this, I want to go on record and say that our board fully supports law enforcement and our EMS, our fire departments in this county. Even saw on the news where they were firing at firefighters. I mean, firearms, EMS and firemen. And our nation, we're lucky to live where we live at, and in our community. We have a lot of caring people who take care of each other and try to meet the needs of each other, but it's not like that everywhere in our land, in our nation. And I want to have a moment of silence, and let's remember these people for just a minute, if you don't mind. Let's bow our heads. Thanks so much. Let's go ahead and begin and move on into the approval of our minutes for tonight's meeting. Mr. Wooten and or commissioners, are there any additions or deletions for our meeting tonight before we approve the agenda? And we'll come back to the minutes.
Motion approved.
Okay?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Okay, we've got the 4 sets of minutes in front of you. You've had the opportunity to review those. What's the pleasure of the board concerning approval of the 4 sets of minutes as presented?
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay, got a motion, got a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Okay, thank you, commissioners. Let's move to the first item on our agenda tonight, our appointment schedule. And we have a COVID-19 update, and we have Mr. Kehler with us. William, good to see you, sir. And go ahead, and the floor is yours, and give us information. And thanks again to your staff on all you do day in, day out from our board.
Thank you very much. Thanks for allowing me to present an update tonight on COVID-19. Today's day 183 of COVID-19 operations here in McDowell County. Our current numbers that were released earlier today, 11,970 tested, 10,908 negatives, 232 pending, and we currently sit at 830 positive individuals, 5 of which were new positives today that we released. Really good to see our trends moving in the right direction. We've seen that in the last 3 weeks now, and today was no exception. We have 49 in quarantine. That's one of the lowest numbers we've seen in a long time, and just another positive indicator that we're moving in the right direction. 754 are out. We did release 1 additional death today. We currently stand at 27 deaths. We still have a number of people that are recovering, a couple of which remain in serious condition. Hopefully we'll continue seeing this mortality rate be on the decline as our other trends are. Our 7-day rolling average, which looks at the number of new cases reported every 7 days, that trend is one of the ones that we watch very closely. and it is trended in the right direction for over 3 weeks now. One concern that we do have is the number of people being tested has dropped off significantly. That's contributing to a stubborn positivity rate. We're literally stuck at the 7% rate. We want that under 5%. But we've seen us go from 800 to 1,000 tested a week down to, I think last week we did right at 350 tests. So that remains one of the concerns that we have when we look at all of our data is testing numbers are down. From a public health perspective, I think our health director's been very straightforward in being out front and saying the way to contain the virus is through proper aggressive testing, quarantine, contact tracing, and that keeps the community safe. But overall, I think we're really encouraged with what we're seeing. We are coming we're in the midst of the incubation period for the Labor Day weekend, if you will. So any type of bump that we're going to see from Labor Day weekend, we should see this week or the start of next week. But so far, so good. And we continue to closely monitor those trends, specifically with the school system. Our staff and public health's done a lot of work behind the scenes to get a good dashboard up and running so the school system can constantly monitor any hot spots that develop. I think they're on week 5 now, and so far so good with what's going on. Long-term care facilities, let's start at Deer Park first today. And before I go into the numbers, just as a refresher, remember once we declare an outbreak in a long-term care facility, we have to go 28 days without new positives being reported before we can determine or public health can declare the outbreak over. So today is day 17 of the 28-day period for Deer Park. We're certainly moving in the right direction. We demobilized the rest of our equipment today from there. We've moved from daily coordination calls to weekly coordination calls. 23 residents have recovered, 14 have passed away there, 31 staff members tested positive. Those numbers are stable. Cedarbrook, 2 staff members are positive or have tested positive. They are recovering. We have not had any residents test positive. We just got those results in over the weekend. This was the 2nd week of testing with no positive residents, and they're on day 10 of the 28-day course that we got to run. So we're moving in the right direction there. We have PUIs or suspicious cases that popped up through the weekend and certainly last week. That's no different than any week at the other facilities. But the process we got in place, we're in a really good rhythm right now to where we can quickly get them tested, get the results back, and roll it out in the facility and move on. So continuing weekly coordination calls with all the long-term care facilities. It allows us to share best practices and fosters that coordination piece with these locations. Our staff is supporting the Board of Elections for the upcoming early vote as well as the one-stop vote as well as the general election. There's a big push behind the scenes with emergency management to make sure we're supporting them locally with proper personal protection equipment. The state pushed out a lot of PPE to these to the Board of Election offices. We sent staff last week to train some of the poll workers that come in, and we continue close coordination with our local Board of Election folks. Planning section, we're still looking out. The next landmine that we know we're going to come across is the intersection of flu season and if we have additional COVID. So working in conjunction with public health, we're planning that progress. Logistics division, the only concern that we've got right now is we were put on glove allocation for nitrile gloves for EMS, where we're limited to the number of boxes we can order each month, and that's because of a shortage in the supply chain. We can mitigate that through state resource requests if we get there, but internally we're managing it and things are fine. The last thing I'll mention, we're closely monitoring Hurricane Sally and the eventual track it will take. Been extremely wet here the last couple weeks and even the last couple months. I was telling Mr. Wooten, since Saturday we've had over 4 inches of rainfall in the Mill Creek area. We don't need a tropical system on top of what's already failed this weekend and now, but we've been through this before. It's what we've practiced for and done exercises for, and unfortunately seen the number of live events, but we'll monitor it closely in the next 12 to 24 hours and take proper planning actions as needed.
Okay, comments or questions by commissioners?
How about giving us an update on NC-80 from the recent flood?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good point. That was a very unique situation. It's not unheard of, but a lot of folks were surprised. Most places in McDowell County on that evening had blue sky above them, but they see the flash flood warning come out and people were scratching their head, is this a fluke? And it wasn't. Thunderstorm developed above the ridge on Locust Creek or Locust Cove and also Clear Creek. Dumped over 4 to 4.5 inches of rain in a little over 2 hours. It caused rapid rise. I would classify it as that could have been a life-threatening flash flood on Locust Creek. We had 3 private bridges destroyed, 1 private culvert. The next day we implemented footbridges that we had utilized during Alberto to get, we had 7 residents that were stranded, got power and phone restored over the next couple days. But good team effort in there, but goes to show how just a simple thunderstorm could cause a significant flash flood. And those folks, we got notification today, one of the bridges has been repaired and restored. So Mercy personnel have access across the creek now.
Now, the footbridges that we put in are federal funds?
They're temporary footbridges that we
Right.
built back in Alberto, and on this specific incident, we utilized a Army surplus, aluminum surplus bridge from Avery County Emergency Management that they have. It connects in 12-foot increments and was a really neat piece of equipment, and it remains up there.
But the bridges, the drive across bridges, that is up to the resident?
That is correct. So, and this is a very difficult thing for folks who have private bridges that are destroyed during disasters. There's no federal or state program for recovery that provides reimbursement or reimburses them for damages incurred to private bridges or culverts.
Okay.
And a private bridge, $20,000, $30,000 in some cases or higher. And unfortunately, we've seen that tremendous amount of folks in Alberto that had these things destroyed.
And William, I will say this, I said it at our dedication the other day, that I did receive a call and from a gentleman who lives up there and owns property in that area. And he was so appreciative of you and Craig and Stephen Banner and the whole, your whole crew about how responsive you were. You got to put bridges up there, and you know, he was really, really very, very pleased and wanted everybody to know what a great job y'all done that night.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
So, good job. All right, any other questions, comments? There being none, William, thank you, sir. Let's move to our next item on our appointment schedule, and I don't see any times on here, so I can just move forward. Correct, Ashley?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this will be an animal services update, and we have Terry here, who's over that department, along with Brittany, Wright, and they're here to give an overview about a proposal to help reduce the feral cat population. And I know that commissioners are very interested in making sure that there is a controlled feral cat population in McDowell County. So, with that being said, Terry, who's going to come up? You're going to come up and introduce? Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Commissioners, Mr. County Manager. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to you again. Again, wanted to give you a brief update before I introduce Brittany again back for the CAT program, but want to thank you again for your support for the animal shelter and the animal services. In August of this year, we celebrated 1 year with our new staff, and those young ladies have a passion for the citizens of McDowell County and helping them and the animal welfare. It takes a passion to make that organization work and keep it in the county, and I think the calls we receive, the comments we receive speaks for itself because they do a great job. I want to share with you that thanks to your support, again, we just completed some renovations there, some much needed renovations with painting inside of the walls, the ceilings, floors refinished, and some repairs that were done. We had a inspection completed on the 9th To date, we have had 563 adoptions to this date, and that is outstanding. There's never a limit for this staff, the amount of adoptions they can make happen. It just continues to grow. On the 9th, our state inspector came, and out of 162 items that are on that compliance report, we had 2 non-compliance recommendations. I think that is outstanding, and it speaks a lot for your support and for what they do there. So, again, the comments that I want to share with you on the back page said the floors within the indoor and outdoor primary enclosures and within the indoor walkways have been resealed. The floors within these areas look good. The cat room has been rearranged, removing the wire crate enclosures and utilizing the stainless steel enclosures. This area has been organized and looks great. Records are in order for all animals requested. Good work with these improvements. And that comes from the state North Carolina agriculture inspector. So we are astonished to see good comments come from.
Well, Terry, now, you know, being a commissioner, as all of us commissioners, we receive calls from time to time from people who are concerned about what's going on in their county. And I have not got any calls at all about bad work, nothing.
I appreciate that communication. That's what we like to hear. I do. Introduce again Brittany Wright, our shelter manager, and she wants to share with you the thoughts of the feline program that will sort of help us and help the citizens. Ms. Brittany?
I don't know if you want
I will.
There's 10 there. I'm going to keep one for my reference. Do y'all mind if I take my mask off?
Go right ahead, you're fine. You're more than 6 feet. You're fine.
So I've been trying to think. Feral cats are a large problem in this community as far as animals go. Cats are prolific breeders. They breed several times and have litters several times a year. And where we are here, our climate extends their breeding season because they're polyestrous seasonally, so they can breed from January to August, and sometimes I think it's all the way till October here in North Carolina. So I tried to think of something that we could do while still not swamping our shelter resources and filling up our shelter cages with cats that are not adoptable, because feral cats frequently aren't unless somebody wants a barn cat, and also not euthanizing them, because a lot of times for feral cats that's the option. They're not adoptable, so euthanasia is their option, even if they're healthy. And I find it very difficult to euthanize a healthy animal. So, Asheville Humane Alliance, which is a ASPCA organization, offers spay and neuter for community cats, which are unowned cats. They don't necessarily have to be feral, but they're unowned. They have somebody who feeds them, and that's about it. They live outside. So that's really the definition of a community cat. They offer no charge spay and neuter all the time. It's free. They ear tip so that it's easily identifiable that they are spayed and neutered, so they're not trapped again, or if they are trapped, they're set back free. And they do a rabies vaccination and a feline distemper vaccination. If they've got ear mites, they treat those. If they've got a minor infection, they treat that with Convenia, which is an antibiotic injection. That's free. That doesn't cost us anything. However, there is cost associated with feral animals being housed. Feeding cost, cleaning cost, transporting them to spay and neuter costs. So I estimate that cost is about $7. It costs less than $1.30 a week to feed them for feral cats. What I propose is that caretakers or caregivers of feral cats who are willing for them to come back onto their property, they have to be willing for them to come back to their property and they continue to feed them. They can bring them in on a Tuesday and then they pick them up the following Tuesday. That gives the cat, after surgery on a Thursday, time to recover. Where it's not turned back out after it's had surgery, it's not turned right back out. It's taken care of for the weekend, they pick it up on Tuesday. I know that you might ask, why would you have them come on Tuesday when you're not leaving till Thursday for spay and neuter? Because some of these cats, they can't trap them, or the people are not compliant in bringing them when they say they will. So I said Tuesday, as we know who's there. And that slot, that surgery slot for the ASPCA is not being taken by a cat that's not using it. So we can use it for one of our shelter animals, or we could possibly call somebody else that's on the list for feral cats and say, hey, can you bring the cat in tomorrow? So 1 to 2 cats is about all we'll be able to do a week, but I feel like that's something, and I feel like it's a start. And, Susan Menard has done this for years with the TNR, but this would be a service that the shelter, McDowell County, is offering to the community. I would not at this time propose that we screen people. If they say they have a feral cat, we go by honesty and they have a feral cat. Because while it is costing us some money, it's not costing us a great deal. So we don't really have anything to lose by that cat being spayed or neutered.
You would, one question, Brittany. I guess, what would it cost? And I know that our adoption rate is off the charts, which is fantastic. Are we an animal astray? What does it cost if there is an instance where you could not get it adopted out and nobody wanted that particular animal? What would it cost to put an animal down? I'd say it's greater than $7, isn't it?
It's probably actually not.
Well,
If I was to figure it out, now if we'd had that animal in care, of course that's going to cost over $7. I would really have to look at the cost of our Fatal Plus, our euthanasia agent. But I feel like this is not only good for the animals, I feel like it's good for the community. I feel like it's good for the shelter, that people see that we want to help you. Animals, while feral cats maybe aren't not the most important to people, but animals are an important part of people's lives, many people's lives. So I think that it's kind of a gesture of goodwill, that, we care about these animals. We don't just want to place the burden on you. And that, like I said at the end, it does not affect people that want to surrender feral cats. I would try my best to talk to them and say, this is what happens whenever we take a bunch of feral cats out of a community. More move in because they're feeding on something there. But that doesn't affect, that. People can still surrender feral cats if necessary. So, and we try to find a barn home. Try to find somebody who's willing to take a cat in that will likely never allow you to pet it.
Comments, questions?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I really do. I like it.
But if y'all have any questions, I put my contact information for the shelter at the bottom. So if there's any questions that you all think of, you can email me or call me, let me know. Okay?
All right. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thank
We're
you.
so proud of your staff and you for the excellent job you're doing down there. That place is maintained impeccably, and you're doing wonderful.
We try to keep it as comfortable for everyone as possible. And I was, like Terry said, I was very happy with Lindsay's inspection. I think that was the best inspection we've had in a long time, and she was really happy.
And your partnership too. One good thing the board loves to see is partnerships, cooperation, and you're doing that with your local animal advocacy groups.
Oh, yeah.
And your partnerships you got in place. Here again, you're moving that thing in the right direction at light warp speed, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, we've got to have a good relate. All the rescues in the shelter have to have a good relationship.
That's correct. All right.
Thank
so,
y'all.
Thank you. Ashley, what action we need to take to go ahead and approve the program?
I think that would be a great endorsement of it if you.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
We endorse the program.
Okay,
Second.
discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, like sign, okay? Sounds good. All right, at this time, let's go ahead and move to item C on our appointment schedule. We have Mr. Harmon with us, and this is concerning 3 topics. So Ronald, come on up, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
At this time, we need to call Commissioner Brown, and he wanted to call in on these topics right here. let our clerk get him on the phone.
Yes, I can. Hold on just a minute. Can you hear us?
Okay, all right, Ron, the floor is yours, my friend.
All right, the first request is to allow the county to enter into an agreement with isothermal planning and development for the update of all of our ordinance to the 160D, which is the planning statute. It used to be separate. Counties were 153, cities were 160, and they've been combined. That's a huge task. We're asking that the board allow us to enter into that agreement, and also to update our comprehensive land use plan, which hasn't been updated since 1993.
Okay, Mr. Wood, anything to add to that?
This is something that Ronald and I talked quite a bit about as far as both of those two items, and they're both interrelated. Just staff capacity to do this, and isothermal has that capacity and the expertise to really go through each ordinance and just make sure they're updated appropriately. I had a conversation with the chairman about this last week. If they were to go through one of our ordinances, we don't think so, but you just never know. And they said, ooh, this whole section or this whole ordinance or whatever conflicts with 160D, you can't do this, or you need to update or whatever. They'll come back to the board and make that recommendation. So it's not just going to be we're presenting everything ready to go. If there's an issue, it'll definitely come back before you.
And there is a benefit. The cost is going to be at 50% of what it would normally be because of our participation currently.
Right, as an ARC county that does help out. Yes,
and there's
sir.
how many ordinances? Roughly 12.
I think so.
I think about 12 will be affected.
And so the cost is estimated, our portion minimal $2,200 to max $3,200.
That's right. Yes, sir.
It's pretty cheap to get somebody who knows that stuff to review 12 ordinances and give legal feedback. Comments, questions by board members?
Go ahead and let them do it, because it's 50%.
Commissioner Vaughn's got a motion on the floor then. Is that a motion, Commissioner?
That's a good
Okay.
motion.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed, like sign. Okay? That's one out of three.
The next is the Lake James what we call the Unified Ordinance. We've taken all three. Just a little bit of background. The county has a 1996, a 2003, and a 2016 Lake James Protection Ordinance. Planning board's work to combine all three into one, and it denotes which rules apply to which development. This is to hopefully clear up some confusion in what ordinance goes with what development. And we're asking that the board allow us to move forward with the changes.
Okay?
Make a motion to approve, please.
All right. Got a motion? Do I have a second? Second discussion. Mr. Wood, go ahead, sir, and add.
What was the motion? I'm sorry.
So go ahead and move along with the request from staff.
On the Lake James ordinance?
Yes.
As far as adopting, so a quick procedural item there, you can't adopt the ordinance tonight.
Okay,
So
we can move forward with the...
You can schedule it for next month.
Okay.
There does have to be a
Okay.
hearing for that.
I'll withdraw that motion. We'll just, by consensus, is that what we'll do?
You had the
Motion to
motion?
next month, I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
There, if I may, there was a discussion or a question, I think, with one of the recent meetings, maybe with the planning board, about trams, or maybe the Board of Adjustment. That's not in this document because this is something that was in the works prior to that discussion. So if there's a request to have the tram item looked at, there would need to be direction from the commissioners through staff to the planning board. If not, then you can schedule it for adoption at your October meeting.
Could we, a question, could we, at our next meeting, could we adopt, if the board is so inclined, the consolidation of the three ordinances into one, and then give direction to have staff? That way you're getting them adopted, you're getting combined, you're not losing another meeting time, and go ahead and then even at that time give direction on transfers. I think, you know, I think we need that. I know that with Lake James now having two and the Board of Adjustments approving a third one, that's going to be the fad now, and we need to have those regulations in place and something from the planning board to govern that, so the board can review and approve that. That's my take on it.
Don't need to drag on for long period of time.
It's actually a good point, because you would then be amending one ordinance and maybe not three.
Exactly.
We can,
So by consensus, we bring it back next month.
there will be a hearing for that, which
Okay.
the October meeting is at the Carson House. That is consistent with your direction.
Okay, so on that one then, by consensus, we'll move forward. That will be on next month's meeting, so we can satisfy the requirement to have the public hearing, correct? Okay. All right. Third thing.
We'll lead out with that one.
Yeah, I'll take that one. The next item, let's see, what's the page number? Is a draft firearm safety ordinance. This was discussed by the commissioners several weeks ago. The planning board, as you recall, was asked to look into this topic and make a recommendation back on consideration of the safe distance to discharge a firearm away from a residence. And so you have a document there that establishes a distance away from a residence that is not controlled by the person discharging the firearm, set at 50 yards or 150 feet. And that was based on the direction, suggestion of the planning board. Should be about page 43 where you see that as far as the draft.
Tony, can you hear Ashley?
I'm Terry. Can you move the phone over as chairman? We're going to hear him very clear.
Could you hear Ashley speaking right there?
I believe you just highlight those things that you have to hear you.
Okay. Ashley, go ahead.
The document you see there, it may be easier to float around. The document, again, is a draft document prepared by staff based on recommendations made by the planning board. And this is something that can be amended, of course, if you so desire. But again, under Section 8, specific restrictions on discharge of firearms, the language is, it shall be unlawful for any person to discharge a firearm within 150 feet of a residence, not owned, leased, or otherwise controlled by the person discharging the firearm. Letter B, it shall be unlawful to discharge a firearm in any manner which results in the projectile leaving the property in which it was fired unless the landowner or lessee of the property to be traversed by the projectile has granted permission. So that's the main, and there are exceptions about defensive property, use of law enforcement officers, when hunting as allowed by Chapter 113 of North Carolina General Statutes. Hopefully not by a member of the armed forces acting in the line of duty. That would be terrible. And shoot on a person's own property for protecting their property from either a person or an animal. And so there's a penalty section that is inserted as well, warnings, and then fines that are maxed at $500 for a fine, which is per incident, which is the statutory maximum, $500. It's a fifth violation of this is a Class 3 misdemeanor allowed by the statute.
Okay. Okay, you can turn it back over to Chairman then. I guess he'll ask for debate or comment on it.
Actually, one question I've got.
Yes, sir.
The violations, the fines. So statutorily, that's the max you can go, right?
Yes, sir, 500. 14-4 is the maximum.
And that's set by General Assembly, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because I looked at that, I thought, that's a little weak. I mean, if somebody who has, if money's not an object, then when it's aggravating a neighbor, that didn't look like it was too strong to me, but if it's statutorily set by the General Assembly, that's where it has to be. Okay. Comments or questions by board members?
When we first started discussing this, it was mentioned that we had a petition that had been signed by over 300 people in the community, and we still have not seen that petition. And I've asked about it, and we've still not seen it. So I'd like to see that petition before we move forward with it.
Okay. Did you hear that, Tony?
Yes, it is, and I think Mr. Reed is aware that I had been out of town for a couple of weeks, and I hadn't had any chance to get back to those people that did have that petition, but anyway, I can still follow up on that and see what they have.
All right.
But, you know, I did, my first thoughts on this, whether there was a petition or not, I'm in favor of doing something on this, address this issue, because of the meetings that we've had. And my first thoughts on it were people would have it to address the property lines in the business. And then, of course, there was some that didn't agree with that. My hope now would be that, big mind to put a restriction on the distance from a residence. But I would personally like to see that distance to be 300 feet instead of 150 feet.
You're saying 100 yards, right? And that was at 300 feet. Somebody's a math major. What was 75 yards equal? Actually, Ron?
Not a math major. It's 225 feet.
Two what?
Less than 250, right?
225.
225, okay. All right. We'll just go around the room, let each commissioner talk about it, then we'll go ahead and make some kind of decision. What it's going to be up and down. Brandy, go ahead. We'll start with you.
I don't know that I have my thoughts together on this. I think that I don't want to create a county situation where people can't enjoy their weaponry on their own land. I do think that when the gun range is finally open, it will be a place that a lot of people will go, but still we've got people that have a range on their own property or have a range in their, hey, this bear's got a whole stack of hay he shoots into in his own backyard, and I don't see him going to the gun range away from what he's done for 50 years, Wouldn't even ask him to, because he's been safe that long, so we'll leave him alone. Sometimes I think we change things and it makes it worse, and sometimes we change things and it makes it better, and I think this is one of those situations. We've got a Pandora's box and I don't know how to open it, so I'll let somebody else go for it.
Commissioner Peters. I'll get it going, please.
I understand there can be issues, with discharging firearms, and we talked about music before, and we've dealt with shooting ranges and stuff in other areas in the county, making unnecessary noise or what neighbors say. I grew up at a time where, you could walk outside, shoot a gun in the bank behind your house. And I remember the sheriff then was Bobby Haynes, and my dad did gun repair, and he was kind of proposing the thing that there would have to be so many feet within the residence. And my dad went to that meeting and approached him and said, look, I'm on my property, I'm shooting into the bank. And he said, well, there's nothing wrong with that. He said, no, within that, I would be within the violation because the residence across the creek from me is closer than the 150 feet. And he said, I wouldn't even be able to test fire a weapon whether it be a pistol or 22 or anything, because I discharged that. I know my son hunts just outside the city limits in Marion. There's houses that are actually closer, but it is on county property and private property, which it is closer on one side, the residents are closer. So if we say 150 feet, or if we say 50 feet, I would say those residents are probably less than 100 feet on the opposite side of where they actually hunt at. They've got to where they just use the crossbows instead of actual guns, but it is outside the city limits. So I think, in my personal opinion, I would like to table it until next month. I know Yancey County, I actually contacted the sheriff earlier, and Yancey, Mitchell, and Avery does not have any ordinances in place. And those are the counties that are touching right around us. I know Buncombe County is a little bit stringent. You get into Charlotte, I think they're 900 yards or 900 feet, so it's pretty stringent. And we know that we live in a county that's very pro-gun. I want to see the petition with 300 names, and I want to know if they're McDowell County residents. We can get, as Brenda said, Ms. Vaughn said, is that we can open Pandora's box. And I think it goes back to what we've said before. It's neighborly consideration. Neighbors have got to learn to be neighbors and work together. When government starts getting involved, we wind up with Pandora's box. So in my opinion, I'd like to table at least for next month to get some more information from the other counties, and I'll personally talk to some of the sheriffs, myself, Gary Banks from Yancey that borders us, because I know there's areas out there that are a lot closer where people hunt, and I'm just afraid it can cause issues for us in the long run.
Okay. All right. Ron, give some, we weren't, we're not on the planning board, of course, but give us some insight to your membership on that board and some of the back talk, I guess, among the members there in the meeting. That did they look at a distance greater than 50, and did they look at 75 yards, 100 yards, or what did they do? What was the conversation?
They started at 300 feet.
They started at 300 feet.
And the biggest concern was if you wanted to sight your gun in for hunting season, that's going to severely handicap a lot of people in McDowell County because their neighbors are closer than 300 feet.
So they started 100 yards in, right? 100 yards in, yes. 300 feet, okay.
And they worked their way down until they got to 150 feet. This is actually wording that was basically taken from Wilkes County. They liked the way that the Wilkes County was written. They all came to a consensus that 150 feet was as reasonable as you could get and still be able to keep the rights for the guys in the backyard that want to sight in their guns. Their biggest concern was, of course, if you own 10 acres, but you shoot into a berm that's within 100 yards of your neighbor's property, you've got 10 acres and yet you can't fire your gun because the area that you shoot is taken up. So their biggest concern was the distance from properties, because not all property lines, not all houses are in the middle of property, not all houses are that far apart. So.
Question, would this be a complaint driven, something that would be enforced, or upon complaints from the neighbors, or just, okay, you can't do it, we're gonna fine you?
That was our assumption. Most of our ordinances are complaint driven, and just under assumption, of course, we were taking under assumption that the sheriff's department would be the one that goes out to the complaints. So they would be in charge of making sure the distances were right and finding out if the person was doing it legally or not.
And my question too would be, what did as a sheriff review this also, and what kind of feedback is he getting?
We didn't send it to the sheriff.
I sent it to him, and I haven't received feedback per se, good, down, bad, or ugly. It was received We shared the other counties that have similar regulations. As I understood from him, he was going to contact those sheriffs to see how they enforce it. So it was just.
And what did has our county attorney reviewed this too? Fred, have you looked at this document yet?
Not in detail. I did look at the statute about regulating firearms. We do have that. It's not a complicated ordinance, but carries more political problem than it does.
I'm gonna say one more thing, and I'm gonna be quiet for a few minutes. But I'm gonna ask Ron, has anybody from the community approached the planning board about this ordinance?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, we've not had anybody from the community come in and approach this board about this ordinance. We've not seen a petition. So why do we want to start restricting folks when nobody out there say anything? Now, if they want to come in here, that's perfectly fine. That's what we're here for. But I think we're fixing to open up a problem here that we probably don't want.
Other comments, questions? As far as my personal, you've not heard me say what I think about it yet, and I'll just say what I think about it. I've got no issue with 50. I prefer 100, but I can always go back down. I can back down into 75. I'm talking about yards from the house. And but well, I think we're to the point we need to table this until next month or our next meeting to give the sheriff time to weigh in, to give Tony time to get the petition in, and then to get any other questions that any of the board members need to get answered, and then we can review it at our next meeting and up or down at the end. Tony, anything else you want to say?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else on that topic, Mr. Luke?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, can we make sure that we verify the names if they are county residents and not duplicates on the petitions? Because a lot of times the petitions you have outside residents signing those things. So I'd like to see 300 names on a petition in total in Bell County.
Is that a request for the clerk to review that once that list comes in, Commissioner Peters?
I don't mind spending time to try to verify that with the clerk.
Okay. All right. By consensus, is the board okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the next item then. Let's move to item A. This will be the NCACC legislative goals. Does any commissioner have any legislative goals? I've submitted 3 to the clerk. And Madam Clerk, do you have those with you? If not, that's okay. But I would like my 3 to be heard.
Not offhand.
One was a credit card.
Okay, right now, currently in our DMV tag office, we understand that based upon information that was given to us by our county manager, looking at the receipts that come in versus our outgo, that we are spending roughly $100,000 in fees. Is that correct, Ashley? Using that
I think
machine
so.
per year.
Recollection.
So I think that we ought to have the right to shop it around, to try to get a better deal, even if we're not going to get the money, the state's going to get it. We ought to be able to shop it around so our people, because I've had complaints. Now here's the situation. I've had complaints for people who use that machine and say the fee's too high on the machine. And we have no control over setting the fee. We can't shop the fee or shop the machine around to another company that you swipe your card with up there. So it's totally a monopoly. And that's one, I think that should be. It ought to be the lowest price, best service wins it. And that's one thing I had. Broadband was the second thing I had named for. That petition, that drive-by, Representative Dobson died in a subcommittee, but I think that as the board, in light of the school system and COVID-19, and we're seeing people that have not good access to internet. We need to be advocating for those people in McDowell County strongly through the association that they need somebody, whether it be county units of government, partnerships, cooperation, that we have the infrastructure going in the ground. That's the second one. And the third one related to the school system, letting them have the flexibility to set their own calendar. I think that'll be an association goal, to let the local school systems have control over their own calendar. That's my theory that I thought of. So if anybody else has anything you want to submit to the clerk to the board?
Deadline is September 3rd.
Mm-hmm. So you still have time to submit.
You do meet next week. If something comes to mind, you can bring it forward that week.
Yeah, forward those to our clerk, and she will bring them to us at our next available meeting, okay? Let's move to item B. This is the EMS capital project update, and we have Mr. Kehler with us again. Are you going to speak to this project?
I can.
Staff's going to speak to
You
it?
may jump up and down with excitement. I don't know.
Okay. I'll just say as Williams coming, that's been long, what's happening in McDowell County, and I appreciate our board joining up and catching the vision that has been in place for years. There's been a desire to have a 4-base setup for EMS with the goal of doing that to help increase patient outcomes. Is that right, William?
That is correct.
The response time. This is very important. At our dedication of the northern site the other day, a call came out, and William cited this, and they took off to the Dollar General in North Code. What would have been that? What? From
12 to 15 minute
downtown?
response.
I'll let you carry on from there. You finish that.
Yeah, so really nice to see the plan play out in front of us with that groundbreaking ceremony. So the call in Woodlawn, the ambulance left out of the station during the groundbreaking ceremony. Thursday afternoon, 4 o'clock on US 221. That's a busy time for that highway. But we were able to respond to that call and arrive within 6 minutes. And traditionally, that would have been 12 to 15 minutes on average response time when we go back and look at that. So that's a significant reduction in response time. And anytime we can do that with cardiac calls, any type of emergency calls, you're promoting a better outcome for the patient. So the construction, the new construction as well as the remodeling continues on that station. They've laid quite a bit of block since we were last there on the ambulance bay, and are making good progress. And get the weather to cooperate, we'll continue seeing dirt moved to the headquarters station. That lot is looking really nice. Just a lot of teamwork from the county manager's office, our office, Public Works, or Public Services, and it's the contractors. I'm really proud to see this project progress, and it's a win-win for this county for many, many years to come.
And the board stated when we were discussing this as a group, and we stated we want you guys and girls, men and women, to have the best because you're the best. Is that right? Lynn? Brenda?
We appreciate it. I mean, this will be first-class facilities for emergency services. And like I said, will serve this county and the citizens and visitors for many, many years to come. So a very exciting project.
I will say this about William and his staff. It also, and I'm not just trying to single them out, saying other folks don't do this, but I'm saying that you and the sheriff, the emergency services in this county, when you come before us and you make a request, you've done your homework, you know what it's going to cost you, you've done the planning ahead of time, sometimes for years, and that's why that I've always said you won't get a no from me, because I know when you come and ask for something, it's because you need it and it's for the betterment of the county.
Appreciate that.
Okay, any other comments, questions? All right, we're just looking forward to the completed product in early 2022. All right, let's move on to the next item. This is the public shooting range update. Mr. Wood, go ahead and sort of lead us out on that.
Hey. Yes, sir. This is a very brief update on the public shooting range. Again, this is the cooperative project with NC Wildlife. for the range that is going to be built on Ashworth Road on county-owned property. Again, the local contractor, being England Builders, was the contractor selected as the lowest responsible bidder. They have a notice to proceed dated this past Tuesday and are getting the last permits, things lined up, et cetera, to get started very soon on that work. Them and their subcontractor, which is Suttles Grading. So this will be something definitely as soon as we can, on a day like this, but a nice sunny afternoon to have another great groundbreaking for something that has been in the works, not quite as long as these bases, but at least since 2016. So it takes a while. This probably took a little longer than it should based on delays, but the end product will be definitely worth it for the public's use. So we'll keep the board up to date, of course, on this. Again, this is a very, for staff, cooperative project. Ronald has gone to a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations. Terry is helping out lately on the capital side. So your staff works well together and gets these projects done for the benefit of the public.
Okay, comments, questions? Okay, let's move to the next item, courthouse update under old business item D.
I haven't had this on the agenda in a while. The project is not complete yet, and so when it's not on there, you might think it is. According to Mr. DePoyster, the courthouse project is scheduled to be complete December 15th of this year. The last stages to be worked on are mostly in the lower level of the main building. The jury assembly room is being renovated, and some other restrooms that are in the lower levels for the public. So if you remember, there was a public men's restroom on the lower level, and that's been renovated to be ADA compliant. There will be a women's restroom on the same end that is being built, compliant, of course, and the jury assembly room will be in some former storage areas of that space. The parking deck and for both levels will be sealed as part of this project. Again, water intrusion on days like this for many years was a problem for the county administration building down below. You'd have water come in to offices, different hallways, and so this will definitely eliminate issues we've had there. Parking is going to be, has been an issue for staff of both the court system and county employees for the duration of this project. And as we head towards the completion, parking of a different sort will be somewhat of a, I won't say issue, but it will be something we'll work on to where before we had more parking on the upper and lower levels, and now there's a courtroom on the upper part and offices on the lower level to some degree. So there will be less parking spaces available. So now we have about 46 spaces after the project is completed. We're going through with the state and county offices to determine what their requirements might be, and we'll have to go through maybe order of security preference, those sorts of things on assigning parking spaces. So that will be challenging, but we'll work with the officials and have a happy ending there. So we're excited for December 15th and look forward to having that project complete behind us.
Parking, as a commissioner, we've all had phone calls and business owners talk about that since the project began. But here again, I want to congratulate the board on making the right choice. When you looked at a new courthouse off-site or renovating that one that's there, the board made the choice to go ahead and renovate with an additional space being built on another courtroom. And through many change orders and requests that have arisen, you're looking at about $21 million just to construct the building, not to furnish it and get pavement done outside, versus this project's going to wind up about what? $8.5 million.
That's right.
From top to bottom, with your new units in there, your electrical, your heating and air. You've got, if you go look at it, even the top corner room in that courthouse now looks good and is being utilized. We'll have 0% vacancy in any rooms up there when we get done, right, Ashley?
Yes, sir. I think an issue will be we need more space after it's done, but we're working on that with different agencies to make sure they have appropriate storage moving forward. But for those that haven't been through lately,
the board was asked the question of our finance director, how much would it cost to pay for the project? And the local government commission requires a county to have a plan on how you're going to repay any debt that has to be approved before you can enter into that debt. And this board made the choice to go ahead and raise the property tax rate by 3.75. And the board's on record as stating that the goal is hopefully next spring, next June, to look at lowering that rate, if not sooner, based upon what is happening with our sales tax. And I don't want to jump ahead and talk about sales tax now, but McDowell County is faring well. And so here again, I want to say to my fellow board members, that's a great decision y'all had on what you did and taking that building, because you would have had to maintain 2 courthouses then. If you would have built off-site, we would have had 2 courthouses to maintain. And the problem with what do with the old courthouse, who you going to stick in there? So we've about got the goal of the board all is about to come to play here with you're having all your court functions from your public defender to your DA, and eventually the goal is to get our probation parole people housed up in that building, in the county admin building. So we're working, that's going to be a totally function, a total court functions on, and that's the end game goal. And talk about parking, I started by saying parking. We really wanted to have that problem fully addressed until that new EMS base is open and that old base is torn down. My goal, I'll say right now, my goal is when that base is torn down, your old one you're in now, William, is to have some kind of parking deck. Partner with the city, because we need more parking. Our town, our city's growing with different festivals that take place. Bigfoot was put on hold because of COVID this year, but they were busing those people in from all areas outside of town. And so we need space for our employees to park, and there's 46 spaces that will be available on the courthouse deck. And we've got how many spaces do we have prior to this Terry project beginning?
Roughly 70.
So you can see you've got 70, and they were fighting over 70 spaces. Now you've got 46, and you've got everybody's going to have their hand at the table wanting those spots. So the parking issue, from a guy who may have a barber shop right there in the corner, to somebody who works in that building, to somebody who drives up there to use some service in that building, is not going to be addressed until we get Williams crowd and their situation addressed. Is my take on that. That's a little out there as far as down the road, but we've got plenty down the road. You got plenty. So anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry. Any other comments, questions by board members? There being none, let's move to the next item. West Court Street Office Lease. Mr. Wood, go ahead. This is item A in the new business.
Yes, sir. This sort of follows right after the courthouse project and is interrelated. A couple of years ago, the public defender's office was created for this judicial district, being Rutherford and McDowell. That was honestly a surprise, at least for people in a position like mine. And so the courthouse, as designed, that project, again, did not factor that in because that was not planned, at least for what we understood. So the commissioners graciously allowed for a lease of private office space to take place at that time to provide space for Ms. Laura Powell, public defender, and her staff. So that's been almost 2 years now. Space has worked very well for that function, and they've been very complimentary for your action there. You did authorize the renovation of that lower space below the courtroom, which was made for the public defender's function. They moved in about 2 weeks ago, finally. That was used, it's been done for maybe about 9 months or a year. It was used sort of as a swing space for other functions, but they are in there as of the 1st of September. We are asking that you allow the continuance of that lease. I've mentioned in many meetings, Mr. DePoyster and I have had discussions, many over the last 2 or 3 years with probation and parole staff at the regional level advocating for their local staff. We are responsible, as we are with court officials, to provide probation and parole staff as well. About 10 years ago, the county purchased the old ESC building on State Street. About half of it was used at that time, a couple of years on that board, and about 8 probation officers were on staff. Some of it was even used for election machine storage, because there was just plenty of space. Fast forward 10 years, there are now 15 probation officers. They have renovated bathrooms, closets, about any square footage in that space is full of human beings. And so they have been advocating politely, they're not sternly yet, reminding us of our obligation. But so what we are suggesting, if you will allow the usage of this lease space, they're willing to split their staff up essentially in half, to move half into this space, to give a little bit of breathing room for them, to allow all their staff to come on site. That will give staff some time, our staff time to recommend a permanent location for their to come back all together.
And actually too, from a staff level, if you could keep the board informed as you're moving forward with the situation with your probation and parole people, you know, what plans are for them, maybe long-term, and other county functions long-term. If you identify any potential sites that are currently not owned or assets of McDowell County, let the board know so we can examine that, and with recommendation coming from your big picture plan of people and where they need to be and most effectively placed.
Yes, sir. We definitely want to always be looking at opportunities to get services where they need to be for functions like this, as well as county functions, to better serve our public. I mean, that's what we do. Yes, sir.
Okay. Comments, questions by board members?
There is an action item, I guess, for the lease renewal.
Sure.
We'll allow that.
Move we extend the lease.
Motion on the floor, we have a second. Discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Okay? Let's go to item B, administrative items.
Yes, sir. We'll go through these one at a time, if that's okay. The first item is a leak adjustment for the Nebo water system. It is the post office. They had a leak, and you have documentation requesting a waiver of
Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion, is that the 600, 640? And that is federal government right there, correct? And so they had no knowledge of the leak and they repaired it?
That's right.
Okay. Any comments? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you. The next item would be the EMS write-offs. We try to do these every month, keep these up to date.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve the EMS write-offs.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor say aye. Any opposed, like sign.
Okay, thank you. The next would be budget amendments GF 1 through 8, and then SP 1 for the school project. And most of these going through, maybe all, but going up through GF6. These are maybe not exactly the same line items or definitely not amounts, but if you go back and look at the GF1s through whatever for each year, there's usually reserve funds at the end of one year that we reserve and appropriate in the following year. In GF1, for example, this is sales tax reimbursements that we anticipate receiving this year. So this isn't revenue that we would, for people going to Walmart or whatever. These are purchases that the county will make during the year, and we're anticipating getting reimbursed for that sales tax we pay out.
Move that we approve the amendments as presented.
Okay, a motion and a second.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed like sign.
Mr. Chairman, the last item I believe we have is the tax matters under new business. These are fairly typical, but you do have the 2009 write-off and a memo there from the tax collector. These are no longer collectible. We're asking to be written off.
Move that we approve the tax matters.
Okay, a motion and a second. All right, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Okay. All right, let's move to the next item. This would be item C, tax matters. Mr. Wood, go ahead, sir.
That was just handling.
Oh, I mean, okay, I didn't check it off, sorry about that, guy. Okay, down to citizen comment. Do we have anybody present who wishes to speak? Madam Clerk, is anybody signed in?
No, sir, they have not.
Okay, let's move to the next item, reports, communications, staff or commissioners. Anything we need to be made aware of?
I have maybe a couple, if it's okay. Did receive an email, I'm thinking maybe you did too, but just the Lake James cleanup. There will be an event there on October 3rd. They're meeting at the Hidden Cove Boat Access, and if you're interested, we'll send that out. And it's not necessary for the adjournment. As a reminder, if it's still according to your preference, our next regular monthly meeting would be at the Carson House in October. Just as a reminder, that would be October 12th. We have at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, duly noted. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second. Discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, the meeting is adjourned.